This is the Mop-Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City trying to stay warm. On January 22nd, 2026, Thursday, former special counsel Jack Smith testified publicly for the first time before the House Judiciary Committee regarding his investigations into President Donald Trump. Testifying before the Republican-controlled committee, special counsel Jack Smith said Donald Trump is the one who caused January 6. Smith said he will not be intimidated. Smith warned there are catastrophic threats to our democracy, and those threats can be traced to our failure to prosecute Donald Trump. Smith said he wasn't spying on members of Congress. He requested phone logs of House members who spoke with Donald Trump before, during, and after January 6 to determine who inside the Republican Party was working with Donald Trump to postpone the counting of the electoral votes on January 6. One of those people Donald Trump spoke with on January 6 before, during, and after was the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan refused to testify before the January 6 committee. He was subpoenaed, but he wouldn't go before the January 6 committee and testify under oath and reveal just exactly what he and Donald Trump were talking about all day on January 6. Jack Smith said he had no idea why Donald Trump pardoned the January 6ers. Smith said, quote, "I do not understand why you would mass pardon people who assaulted police officers. I don't get it. I never will." Smith said he has no doubt that Pam Bondi will be coming after him soon with a criminal indictment. He assured Republicans, despite what they say, Donald Trump engaged in criminal activity. Donald Trump took to social media during the testimony, calling Jack Smith a deranged animal. This is the Mop-Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Well, it's called the Kavanaugh stop. It's a colloquial expression ICE agents use. This after a Supreme Court ruling last September where Justice Brett Kavanaugh said Border Patrol officers can question and detain anyone based on whether they look or sound Hispanic. It was this ruling that gave Greg Bovino, the border commander running ICE operations in Chicago, Los Angeles, and Minneapolis, all the confidence he needed to tell a white male reporter from WBEZ radio in Chicago that before pulling someone over and demanding proof of documentation, one of the primary articulable facts is whether they look like you. If they don't look or sound like you, a white male, that's an articulable fact to justify asking for papers. In other words, if you're not white in America, thanks to Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court ruling, if you're not white, you're automatically now suspect. According to the Supreme Court, ICE agents have 6 standards upon which to justify what they call a Kavanaugh stop. Number 1, this is the Supreme Court, September. Number 1, ethnicity. Number 2, does the person speak Spanish or do they speak English with a Spanish accent? Number 3, what is their ability to speak English? If it's not good, you can ask for papers. Number 4, where are they hanging out to find work? Number 5, are they performing a job that requires little to no paperwork, like gardening, roofing, or construction? And 6, do they live in a neighborhood with a high density of immigrants? This is why the Minneapolis Star-Tribune reports this morning that ICE agents detained a U.S. citizen based on the reasonable suspicion that he spoke with an accent. Roman Minera, a naturalized U.S. citizen, was returning home with his 5-year-old daughter after the two went out for ice cream. Unable to pull into his driveway because it was blocked by ICE agents detaining somebody else, Ramon Manera asked them, please move your vehicles. By the way, you see the height difference there? I'm going to be talking about. That's Ramon Manera on the right. On the left is the ICE agent. With guns drawn, the ICE agents demanded he show proof of his citizenship, with one ICE agent captured on video saying, quote, now, talking to you, hearing that you have an accent, I have reason to believe you are not born of this country. Again, notice the height differential. Manera immediately pointed out that the ICE agent questioning him also had an accent. If you're born in America, you don't say, you are not born of this country. You say born in this country. So Manera pointed out that the ICE agent questioning him had an accent, adding, I'm a U.S. citizen. I don't have to carry identification. The ICE agent immediately handcuffed Manera, placed him in the back of a van, while Manera's 5-year-old daughter watched. Manera was eventually released only after a background check, including a facial scan. The facial scan confirmed Manera was, in fact, a United States citizen. In his ruling that gave rise to what is now colloquially called a Kavanaugh stop, Justice Brett Kavanaugh wrote that, yes, giving ICE agents permission to round up people based on their apparent ethnicity will occasionally lead to American citizens or law-abiding immigrants accidentally getting caught up in the dragnet. But once these people can verify their legality, they will be released. Have you ever spent 5 minutes in a detention center, Brett Kavanaugh? The Minneapolis Star-Tribune reporting a U.S.-born American citizen with Somali parents was held for 2 days in Minneapolis on suspicion of being in this country illegally. American citizens, Somali, parents, black, held for 2 days in an ICE detention facility. Nearly 12 masked ICE agents demanded that 23-year-old Nasra Ahmed show proof of citizenship, which she provided, but was then thrown to the ground, handcuffed, shackled, called the N-word, and held for 2 days without charges inside the Sherburne County Jail alongside a visibly wounded Native American citizen who was dragged from their car by ICE agents who first shattered the driver's side window. This is 23-year-old Nasra Ahmed being arrested by 2 ICE agents after they threw her to the ground. Look at the height differential. Ahmed, during a tearful press conference where she was wearing bandages, said ICE agents had to take her to the hospital during her detention due to lacerations and a possible concussion sustained during her arrest. The Minneapolis Star-Tribune reports this morning that ICE agents used 5-year-old preschooler Liam Ramos as bait to get members of his family to come out of their house so they could be arrested. 5-year-old Ramos was then arrested along with his father. Okay, there he is. This is the height differential. ICE agent with 5-year-old Ramos. Wait a second. Okay, it's the kid is the one on the... Okay, the full-grown ICE agent is on the right. Okay. The Tribune reports that Liam Ramos, 5 years old, was returning from Valley View Elementary in Columbia Heights. This is in Minnesota. He was standing in the driveway with his father, 5 years old, when ICE agents ordered him, the 5-year-old, to knock on the door of his home and get his family to come out of the house. 5-year-old Liam and his father were then transported to an ICE detention facility in Texas. He lives in Minneapolis, 5 years old. they shipped him to an ICE detention facility in Texas. Okay, then 20 minutes later, Liam's middle school brother returned home to learn from his mother, who was not detained, that both his father and 5-year-old brother were taken by ICE. Lawyers for the family say, while not U.S. citizens, they were in the process of seeking asylum and had performed all the necessary check-ins and filed all the paperwork. Tricia McLaughlin, the official spokes-liar for the Department of Homeland Security, telling The Guardian that ICE is not rounding up children, and that sometimes children are shipped off to detention centers if their parents are being taken so they are not separated. But Liam's mother was still in the house with his middle school brother about to come home. The incident took place in Columbia Heights, a suburb of Minneapolis. Columbia Heights School Superintendent Zena Stenvik on Thursday said another adult living in the home asked to take Liam. ICE refused. The BBC reporting school board member Mary Granlund was there begging ICE to let her watch Liam, but they said no. They detained him, 5 years old, and shipped him to Texas. Columbia Heights School Superintendent Zena Stenvik on Thursday said in the past 2 weeks, ICE has detained 4 of her students. So, ICE had this 5-year-old's mother in the house. A member of the school board offered to take care of him. Why was it necessary to take this 5-year-old child and transport him to an ICE detention facility in Texas? Why was it necessary other than cruelty and profits? U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance was in Minnesota on Thursday defending the ICE agents, saying they had no choice but to arrest the 5-year-old because, quote, the father ran. Vance said, quote, what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to let a 5-year-old child freeze to death? So, JD, I know you just converted to Catholicism. You're probably not familiar with the sin of omission. So, what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to let a 5-year-old child freeze to death? What you're omitting is the mother was there. You could knock on the door and let the 5-year-old child into the house where his mother was waiting. Or you could have allowed the school board member to take him. Okay? Then the Yale Law School graduate asked reporters self-righteously and arrogantly, quote, if the argument is that you can't arrest people who have violated laws because they have children, that doesn't make any sense. You condescending prick. See how they changed the conversation? That's what you learn at Yale Law School. We're not talking about the dad who should not have been arrested. We're talking about a 5-year-old child shipped off to a detention center in Texas while his mother was still inside the house and somebody from the Board of Education was willing to watch him. So you just deflect, you change the topic. What, we're not supposed to arrest his father? We're not talking about arresting his father. We're talking about detaining a 5-year-old boy in Texas. What is that, like 1,000 miles away from Minnesota? By the way, J.D. Vance, his wife, just announced she's having a baby. This is true. I think it's going to be their 4th kid. The child, from what I hear, was conceived on October 31st when J.D.'s wife came home from trick-or-treating with the kids dressed as a couch. A lot of, I guess that's like lingerie when she dresses like a couch. A lot of pregnant people inside the Trump administration these days. You got JD's wife, Stephen Miller's lizard face wife, Katie, is having a child. Caroline Leavitt, the White House spokesliar, is pregnant. She already has a 2-year-old son who is a prodigy. He's lying already at an 8th grade level. She's pregnant. If you want to make this White House happy and you're working there, get pregnant. Because if Pam Bondi's slow walking the release of the Epstein files has taught us anything, this is a president who loves children. There's Donald Trump with Jeffrey Epstein. In between him and Jeffrey Epstein is his daughter, Ivanka. Isn't that nice? Well, last Friday, a federal judge in Minneapolis issued a temporary injunction ordering ICE officers to stop using tear gas on peaceful protesters, to stop arresting peaceful protesters, as well as motorists who are simply following ICE agents. It's not against the law to monitor and record law enforcement. The judge also ordered ICE to stop retaliating against protesters. If you make trouble, Greg Bovino and his ICE goons will often just sit outside your house and threaten you. Judge Kate Menendez, a Biden appointee, issued the ruling as part of a lawsuit filed by civil liberty groups, including the ACLU, on behalf of several protesters, including a grandmother who was savagely beaten by ICE agents. U.S. citizen, grandmother. So Judge Kate Menendez ruled that monitoring ICE agents is protected by the First and Fourth Amendment. Head of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, called this injunction, quote, a little ridiculous. No, Kristi, touring an El Salvadoran dungeon, slathered in so much makeup, you look like a Romanian drag queen, that's ridiculous. Noem called the ruling out of touch because we need to be able to establish law and order. Yes, ICE agents are trying to establish law and order in Minnesota. You know, like sending a 5-year-old boy to a detention facility in Texas, that kind of law and order. So I was hoping this injunction would hold. A similar injunction was issued late last year by an Illinois federal judge, Sarah Ellis. She temporarily reined in ICE officers' use of tear gas on peaceful protesters, but that injunction was lifted, or as they say, stayed, by the Circuit Court of Appeals. So this is, I had a picture. There we go. This is where is it? Well, I had a picture of Border Commander Greg Bovino tossing tear gas at ICE agents. I guess we can't, something screwy. Bovino tossed tear gas at not ICE agents, at peaceful protesters in Chicago last year in violation of this judge's order, Sarah Ellis's order. Bovino was called in. He testified under oath that his life was in danger, that he said, I got hit in the head with a rock. But when video of the incident was played in the courtroom, Bovino admitted he lied under oath. Well, that injunction was stayed by the appeals court, so ICE is free to act with relative abandon in Chicago. And sadly, on Wednesday, the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals did the same with Judge Menendez's Minneapolis injunction. They ruled in favor of the Department of Homeland Security. The Minneapolis Star reporting ICE agents, thanks to this new ruling, are free now to retaliate against ICE protesters and observers, citizen observers. This means ICE agents, the same people who arrested a 5-year-old and shipped him off to a jail in Texas, those very same ICE agents can use their own discretion now to determine whether a protester or a citizen observer is impeding the work of a federal agent or endangering their lives. This is what the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled. It's up to the individual ICE agent to make the determination as to whether protesters or citizen observers are a physical threat to them. So the courts say we should rely on an ICE agent's judgment. If ICE agents had any judgment, say it along with me, they wouldn't have to be ICE agents. These are not discerning individuals. It's why only ICE hires them. You know, instead of ICE, they should call themselves the unemployables. This is for people who are all out of options. Why do you become an ICE agent? I have no marketable skills other than being a rageaholic whose wife and kids don't talk to me. So I guess I must have been born to be a UFC fighter, but I'm too fat and lazy, so I should be an ICE agent. So yes, let's allow ICE agents, glorified hoodlums with badges and a gun, let's allow them to use their own judgment on when to use force. Immediately after the injunction was lifted, Border Commander Greg Bovino was caught on video celebrating by tossing some sort of chemical irritant at Minneapolis protesters. Bovino held a press conference in Minneapolis on Tuesday, and I owe this half man an apology. See, I did it again. It's like I keep calling Greg Bovino half a man. And as you can clearly see from this picture, he's actually 6/10 of a man. So my apologies to tiny Greg Bovino, who hates his body, so he takes it out on others. Now, to my sisters in Minneapolis, stop calling Greg Bovino a Nazi. I'm up all night watching your patriotic work that you're doing. And thank you for this. But the women, you got to stop calling Greg Bovino a Nazi. Calling Greg Bovino a Nazi is like calling Greg Bovino. That's who he is. You say Nazi, and he goes, yes, you want something? Stop calling Greg Bovino a fascist. Ladies, please, call Greg Bovino short. The women who get it, it's like a gut punch. Whenever I see a woman protester in Minneapolis calling Greg Bovino short, it's a gut punch. Call him short. That's who he is. This entire administration is predicated on how you look. So make fun of the way these people look. They think we're not going to do it. I've dealt with bullies all my life who they look for what they think you perceive as your own weakness, and then they chew away at it, and they don't think you're going to do it back to them because, oh, I'm a liberal. You know what I say? When they go low, we go lower. Or in Greg Bovino's case, much lower, down to our knees, and look him in the face and say, who's a cute little rageaholic? Who's a cute, oh, you're a good border commander, aren't you, Greg Bovino? Yes, you are. During his press conference, I get complaints about this. You know, you're making fun of short men. No, I'm not. I'm making fun of people like Greg Bovino with obvious body dysmorphia who take it out on others. I'm not making fun of short men. I'm making fun of violent men who can't accept who they are. During his press conference, I know people get really angry. I've lost listeners because of this. What can I tell you? What can I tell you? I want to hurt their feelings. I don't believe in violence. I believe in hurting the feelings of Nazis. They say punch a Nazi. I don't believe in punching a Nazi. I don't believe in violence. But I know how bullies think, and they think we're never going to go where they go when it comes to psychological abuse. Call Greg Bovino short. It'll break him. During his press conference, the very short Greg Bovino said, "Our operations are lawful. They're targeted." That's what he sounds like when I see him. Hang on, I got something here.
Our operation, this is how Greg Bovino talks. Hi, our operations are lawful, they're targeted, and they're focused
on individuals. That's really annoying. He said our operations are lawful, they're targeted, and they're focused on individuals who pose a serious threat to this community. Yes, they're targeting people. ICE is targeting people who pose a serious threat to the Minneapolis community, like a 5-year-old child who had to be separated from his mother and shipped off to an ICE detention facility in Texas. See, Greg Bovino hated this 5-year-old because the kid was already twice Greg Bovino's size and 3 times as literate. During the press conference, Bovino called his agents legal, ethical, and moral. Yes, very moral. Yes, like putting 4 holes into a woman and then, as she lay dying, calling her an effing bitch. Just because this Justice Department refuses to prosecute, let alone investigate, that ICE agent who killed Renee Good, it doesn't make his actions legal, ethical, or moral. It just means the people Greg Bovino answers to, just means Greg Bovino himself, they are all acting illegally, unethically, and immorally. Bovino said during his press conference, the crisis in Minneapolis is the fault of protesters. He then blamed Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz for creating a difficult operating environment for ICE by encouraging citizens to tail agents who are simply performing their jobs. The Department of Justice, as you know, just issued subpoenas demanding documents from the governor, the mayor, and Minnesota State Attorney General Keith Ellison to determine what extent the 3 of them conspired to impede the work of ICE agents. You mean telling citizens they have a constitutional right to record ICE agents, to protest ICE agents? That's a criminal conspiracy to obey the Constitution? Yes, Keith Ellison, Jacob Frey, Governor Walz, they conspired to impede the important work of ICE agents, like putting 4 holes into a woman and calling her an effing bitch while she lay dying, or throwing this grandmother, Susan Tincher, face first to the ground. Why did they throw her face first to the ground? She asked masked men with no identification a simple question: "Are you with ICE?" So they threw her to the ground, put her in shackles, and detained her in an ICE detention facility. Grandmother, U.S. citizen. Yes, they're just doing their jobs, like dragging this pregnant woman through the streets of Minneapolis after holding her face down and sitting on this woman while she kept telling the agents, "I'm pregnant." Look at this. I call them ICE age ICE agents. Me find pretty woman, me drag her home with me because me all out of roofies. Ah, yes, the important work of our ICE agents, like arresting American citizens with Somali parents and calling these citizens the N-word. And of course, did I mention shipping a 5-year-old boy to a detention facility in Texas away from his mother, his family, and friends because Kristi Noem promises us she's only arresting the worst of the worst. Yes, Greg Bovino, you are absolutely right. You guys are just doing your job. And you know what? You are doing your job because under the leadership of your bosses, Kristi Noem, Stephen Miller, and of course, Donald Trump, ICE's job is to terrorize Americans. The message is, if we can do this to a grandmother, if we can do this to a 5-year-old child, a disabled veteran, I'll get to that in a second. If we can do it to them, we can do it to you. So watch what you say. Bovino accused Democrats of, quote, colluding with anarchists in order to create violence against law enforcement. Yeah, it's all about protecting law enforcement, but it's actually ICE that is committing violence against law enforcement. Brooklyn Park, Minnesota Police Chief Mark Brule said ICE agents are now pulling over his off-duty police officers and threatening to detain them, harassing them, intimidating them. The police chief said every one of these individuals pulled over by ICE is a person of color. Police Chief Brule said he's spoken to several other police chiefs in the immediate area, and they all report the same thing, that their officers of color are constantly being harassed, questioned, and detained by ICE when they're off duty and not in a police officer's uniform. Police Chief Brule said if ICE is harassing off-duty cops because they're not white, then it's the tip of the, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Tip of the iceberg? Sorry, but he didn't say that, I did. But it is the tip of the iceberg. And he pointed out, imagine what it's like for ordinary people of color who can't say to an ICE agent, hey, it's okay, I'm a cop. Brule said his officers know the Constitution, they know right from wrong, they know when they're being targeted because of their color. The police chief said a female police officer of color was driving off-duty when ICE agents boxed her in, forced her to pull over to the side of the road. Boxing in is this maneuver that ICE agents do. 2 or 3 ICE agents in 2 or 3 cars trap a car on the road, and then if the car tries to maneuver and get away from them, they say the car has been weaponized, and Lord knows what they do next. First they box the car in. They leave the driver with no options. These are unmarked SUVs so you don't know who is doing this to you. So you want to get away from them. You don't know that they're ICE agents. And the minute you try to maneuver away from them as they're boxing you in, they automatically decide you've weaponized the car, and they can do to you what they did to Renee Good. Anyway, so this police officer, woman of color, off duty, was driving her car. She got boxed in violently. The ICE agents pulled her over. They demanded she show proof of her citizenship. She said, I'm an American citizen. I don't need to show you proof of your citizenship. She began to fear for her safety. So this female police officer of color took out her cell phone and began recording the ICE agents, which is her constitutional right. One of the ICE agents violently knocked the phone out of her hand. We're seeing that a lot now. ICE agents, especially with women. Did you see the ICE agent who said to the woman videotaping him, after Renee Good was shot. He said, "Haven't you learned your lesson?" And she said, "What is the lesson? What is the lesson?" And he just smacked the phone out of her hand. So Brule, police chief, said the only way this black police officer could de-escalate the situation was by proving to the ICE agents she was a police officer. I don't know if she was black. I know she was a woman and a person of color. I don't know what her complexion was, but she was a person of color. This is William Vermey. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name. I apologize. He's a combat wounded veteran, Purple Heart, injured in Iraq. On January 13th, he was in South Minneapolis, standing around 34th Street and Park Avenue, watching ICE agents arrest two young men. It's not illegal to watch ICE agents arrest two young men. Vermey, I apologize, but it's Vermie. I'm going to say Vermey, says the ICE agents decided they wanted to clear the area of bystanders, i.e. witnesses, and they just began shoving him with no warning. They accused him of not moving out of the way quickly enough, and he was immediately tackled by a group of ICE agents who handcuffed him. He was taken to the Whipple Building in downtown Minneapolis. The Whipple Building serves as a staging and detention center for ICE. He was held there for 8 hours and not allowed to call a lawyer. He was not allowed to call his family. Now, you know, you're entitled to one phone call if you've been arrested. They didn't allow him to make a call to his family or to call a lawyer. Vermey's family hired John Chitwood. He's an attorney, and that attorney went down to the Whipple Building. Chitwood arrived and asked to speak to his client, and ICE refused to let him speak to his client. 8 hours of this. Have you ever been arrested? Do you know how terrifying that is? The attorney, his name is Chitwood, and his client, Vermey, the Purple Heart, the Iraq veteran, they were caught in a feedback loop of bureaucratic red tape. This is how ICE operates. Because Vermey, a decorated war veteran, was forbidden from using his phone, he was unable to communicate with his family, so he didn't know his family had hired Chitwood to serve as his attorney. So when Chitwood arrived at the Whipple Building to ask to speak to his client, ICE said attorneys are not allowed to speak to detainees unless the detainee requests them by name. Chitwood explained, "My client doesn't know my name because he hasn't been able to talk to his family, so he doesn't know they hired me." 8 hours. A U.S. citizen, a decorated war veteran, sat in a holding cell. John Chitwood, Vermey's attorney, said, "He is a combat-wounded Iraq war vet, and if someone who has honorably served their country is treated this way by the federal government, then how are they treating other people?" Right? Same thing that the police chief, Brule, said about his officers of color. If this is how ICE is treating off-duty cops of color, imagine how they're treating people of color who aren't off-duty cops. Unbelievable. Well, the Department of Homeland Security accused Chitwood, the attorney, not only of lying. The Department of Homeland Security said these are not just lies, these lies endanger the lives of ICE agents. The Department of Homeland Security insists no detainee goes 8 hours with access to a phone or a lawyer. They said that didn't happen. The Department of Homeland Security, ICE detention facilities have higher standards than most U.S. prisons, higher standards than most U.S. prisons, as though that's supposed to impress us. Have you ever seen a prison, a state prison, a federal prison? Meanwhile, a jury on Thursday failed to convict a Mexican immigrant living in Chicago of conspiring to kill border commander Greg Bovino. This is your tax. I'm going to tell you about this. These are your tax dollars. Juan Espinosa Martinez, who the New York Times describes as a longtime resident of Chicago and a union carpenter. Remember this, he's a union carpenter. He was put on trial, accused of orchestrating a murder-for-hire plot to kill Greg Bovino, offering $10,000. So what was the evidence? Martinez forwarded two friends on Snapchat a picture of Greg Bovino from Facebook. He captured a screenshot of a post from Facebook. It was a picture of Greg Bovino, and the caption on the Facebook post was, quote, $10K if you take him down, $10,000 if you take him down. So Martinez didn't write $10K if you take him down. He sent to two friends on Snapchat a Facebook post where somebody either jokingly said $10K if you take him down. Well, Martinez was arrested for forwarding a Facebook post after one of the two friends on Snapchat turned out to be a government informant, as well as owner of a small construction business. You see where this is going? Now, I didn't attend the trial, but the informer turned him in. There were two people Martinez sent the Facebook post to on Snapchat, his brother and his friend, who turned out to be a government informant and the owner of a small construction business. Okay, so let's connect the dots here. Martinez is a union carpenter, and the government informer who turns him in, owns a construction firm. Why does my gut tell me this government informer owed Martinez back salary and figured if I turn him in, I don't have to pay him? Now, I don't know if that's true. I haven't read the court transcripts. I don't know if anybody ever made that accusation. All I know is at one time, it was believed nearly half the people held in Gitmo were turned in by Afghani informers who wanted to sleep with the wife or the daughter of the guy they turned in. That's how informers work. Anyway, the other recipient of the photo, the Facebook post of Bovino and the $10K offer to kill Bovino, was Martinez's brother, who said Martinez was simply forwarding insane things he found on Facebook. So prosecutors accused Martinez of being one of the leaders of the Latin Kings. It's a big gang in Chicago. But as the trial progressed, the judge ordered prosecutors to stop saying Martinez is a leader of the Latin Kings. There's no proof he has any gang affiliations. The jury deliberated for 3 hours and found him not guilty. New York Times said defense lawyers were successful in convincing the jury that forwarding Facebook posts or repeating neighborhood gossip or laughing at insane pictures with insane captions is not a conspiracy to hire somebody to kill Greg Bovino. Martinez is a poor man who barely understands English. As his lawyer said, how in the world was he going to come up with $10,000 to pay someone to kill Greg Bovino? So, what a waste of time and tax dollars. As I read this story and looked into it, I kept thinking, don't federal prosecutors have something more important to do? And I realized, no, they don't. They're not going after white-collar criminals, not with Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche running the DOJ. They won't prosecute the people who commit corporate fraud because those are the people working right now in the White House. So the Department of Justice really has nothing better to do than prosecute terrified Mexican immigrants for sharing a Facebook post on Snapchat. The truth is, crime keeps going down and down. It's been going down for decades. The national murder rate is now the lowest it's been since 1900. The New York Times just did a story on this. Lowest murder rate since 1900. Now, Trump, of course, is going to take credit for that, but he has nothing to do with it. Violent crime has been going down since the 1990s. So, prosecutors have time to waste. They can accuse broke immigrants of offering $10K for the murder of Greg Bovino, or they can launch criminal investigations into the mayor of Minneapolis and governor and attorney general of Minnesota. This is what happens when you have a Department of Justice that doesn't prosecute corporate criminals, that doesn't prosecute ICE agents who shoot to death a woman and then call her an effing bitch. This is what happens when you have a Department of Justice working for a president who sees his attorney general as his personal hit woman or hit man. The Department of Homeland Security says in the past 6 weeks, it's arrested 3,000 people in and around Minneapolis as Operation Metro Surge continues. Kristi Noem bragging that since Donald Trump returned to office, ICE has arrested a total of 10,000 people in the state of Minnesota, adding that her ICE agents are targeting vicious murderers, rapists, child pedophiles, and incredibly dangerous individuals like, this kid. Look at him. 5-year-old kid. I mean, what a vicious and incredibly dangerous individual. This is clearly a state under siege with people of color, specifically anyone who looks or sounds Somali or Hispanic, considered fair game. And the appellate courts are making it worse. Goes all the way, the fish rots from the head down. The Kavanaugh stops, sanctioned by the Supreme Court, have given ICE agents wide latitude to question, detain, and arrest anyone who looks or sounds Hispanic or Somali. What makes this moment in American history so disappointing, frustrating, terrifying is that the courts could stop all this. Now, the lower courts are trying, but the higher you go up the judicial ladder, the more willing the courts are to turn this country into a police state. The courts could say of us, Greg Bovino, he obeys these injunctions. He does. When Illinois judge, well, he does and he doesn't. But he is. You saw when he was forced to testify before Judge Sarah Ellis, he did lie, but then he admitted he committed perjury and he was remorseful. Judge Sarah Ellis, Illinois, ordered Bovino to wear a body cam. He agreed to do that. He began to to train to wear a body cam. When he was ordered to report to Judge Sarah Ellis, the federal judge in Illinois, he reported to her right up until her injunction was overturned. Again, the point is the courts could stop this. Instead, they're the ones making it worse. The appellate courts are saying it's okay for ICE agents to fire crowd dispersal weapons at protesters, peaceful protesters. It's up to the individual ICE agent. So one of the most underreported stories right now is the use of what they call non-lethal force on protesters, the use of rubber bullets, or sometimes they call them foam batons, pepper spray, pepper balls, and tear gas. It's called non-lethal weapons because they don't kill you. That's what they try to convince us of. They say tear gas won't kill you. Well, it will render a child unconscious. It's what happened to a family in Minneapolis earlier this month when ICE agents randomly shot tear gas directly through the window of their SUV, forcing them to rush their 6-month-old baby to the hospital after she passed out, unable to breathe. One family member had to perform CPR on the 6-month-old child while waiting for medics to arrive on the scene. That's tear gas. 6 months old, a 6-month-old child should not be breathing in tear gas. It's not healthy for adults to breathe tear gas, especially if they have asthma or severe lung issues and chronic respiratory problems. The National Institute for Health, before Bobby Kennedy Jr. took it over, they conducted a study of 5,000 uses of tear gas in real-world situations, and they found 2 people had died from the tear gas. 58 suffered some sort of permanent disability. That's tear gas. Tear gas. 5,000 instances they examined. 2 people died from the tear gas, and 58 suffered some sort of permanent disability. That's just tear gas. Well, what about the other non-lethal ammunition? The Los Angeles Times reports that 2 protesters earlier this month were each permanently blinded in one eye after Homeland Security officers fired so-called less lethal ammunition like foam, batons, and pepper balls at their faces while they were participating in an anti-ICE protest outside a federal building in Santa Ana, California. The incident took place on January 9th. ICE agents fired some sort of projectile at a 21-year-old college student who was holding a megaphone. The 21-year-old college student was named Caden Rumler. Left blinded in one eye. I blocked out. There were pictures that were so disturbing, I just had to block out the wounds. But Rumler was blinded in one eye, came within 7 millimeters of shards from the projectile severing a major artery that would have caused him to bleed out before medics could arrive. Rumler required 6 hours of surgery. His skull was fractured. Doctors say it's a miracle he survived. People living in Los Angeles, well, they all saw this video on the news. They all saw the federal agent at close range firing the projectile directly at his skull. So, is it less lethal than a bullet? Yeah, at least sometimes. The protest also saw federal agents blinding in one eye another demonstrator named Britton Rodriguez. They hit him in the face with some sort of rubber bullet or a foam baton round is what they call them, a foam baton round. Non-lethal weapons can be non-lethal when they're used properly, like when they're not aimed at somebody's face by a basement masturbator with a badge who thinks he's playing Call of Duty. All DHS guidelines dictate that ICE agents should never fire these projectiles directly at someone's face, especially at close proximity. But ICE, it's just a bunch of basement masturbators. Colleen Worthman, the brilliant actress and comedy writer, came up with the term basement masturbators to describe my listeners. I don't know, my longtime listeners might remember when she used to come on the show and the first thing out of her mouth was, "Hello, basement masturbators." So I borrowed Colleen Worthman's term to describe my listeners. I decided ICE agents are basement masturbators because that's really who they are. They really are. They live in their mother's basement masturbating, and nobody will hire them. Colleen Wortman, so funny. Anyway, this is a photograph taken by Ashley Resin of the Chicago Sun-Times back in late September. It was taken as masked ICE agents fired pepper balls into the face of David Black, the pastor at First Presbyterian Church of Chicago, while he was protesting outside the ICE detention facility in Broadview, Illinois. Why did they shoot him in the face? Because the pastor invited the ICE agents to come pray with him. Luckily, the pastor wasn't severely injured. The shooter, well, they took away his gun, they removed his badge, and he's on trial. No, he's back on. They don't discipline these guys. CBS News did a report on this. They won't discipline any of these shooters. That Exum agent who fired 5 shots at a woman, almost killing her, he stepped out of his car and said, "Do something, bitch." Charles Exum, I think, is his name. They did a story on 60 Minutes last week about this. And then he bragged, 5 shots, 7 holes, right? Lied, said, she weaponized her car. Not disciplined. Jonathan Ross, the alleged killer of Renee Good, who allegedly screamed effing bitch while she lay dying. Department of Justice not investigating him. They're investigating the victim's wife to see if they're part of some Antifa. So this pastor, David Black, First Presbyterian Church of Chicago, shot in the face with pepper balls. That's Pastor David Black of the First Presbyterian Church of Chicago. Good man, very good man. And this is Pastor David Easterwood. Some call him Pastor Eastwood. I know him as Pastor David Easterwood of Cities Church in St. Paul, Minnesota. He's a Southern Baptist. So I got this clip from the Roy's Report, ROYS Report. The Roy's Report. It's a Canadian site that covers the church. You should read it. Really well-written stuff. Like, wow, these people study journalism. These people know how to report. If you want to go to the Roy's Report, and Sarah Einselin had this piece over at the Roy's Report, ROYS, Roy's Report. Amazing journalism. It's just so refreshing to see objective, well-written writing. She posted this clip of Pastor David Easterwood from 6 years ago. He's a pastor at St. Paul, at City's Church in St. Paul, Minnesota. It's a clip of Pastor David Easterwood from 2020. He's talking about the Apostle Paul advising Christians to obey Jesus, but at the same time, obey your local authorities, right? The Apostle Paul, Jesus said, render unto Caesar, pay your taxes. So here's Pastor David Easterwood of City's Church in St. Paul, Minnesota. Here he is wrestling with the moral dilemma all of us face when we're confronted by both a loyalty to a higher being and a government that has turned tyrannical. What do we do? What did Jesus say? What did Paul say when your government is a tyrannical government that is at odds with the teachings of Christ? Here's Pastor David Easterwood.
But you're probably asking the question because you can think of governors and rulers and authorities who are a terror to good conduct. Doesn't Paul know that sometimes corrupt governments will terrorize good people for no reason other than selfish ambition? Of course, Paul knows that. He's been in prison himself for good conduct, right? And Paul preaches Christ crucified, the ultimate example of an innocent man being punished and terrorized by the authorities. So what do we do? Well, when the authorities are not like Paul describes, that doesn't automatically give us license to do whatever we see fit, right? Romans 13 lays out what the authorities ideally are supposed to do in the first half, and in the second half, what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to fulfill the law by loving one another.
Loving one another. You see, this is why it's so important to listen to religious leaders. Love one another. Even if the government has turned tyrannical, love one another. Yes, always come from a place of love. Well, you know, it's hard out there for a pimp, a pastor. And, you can't support your family just preaching the gospel. Even Jesus had to work as a carpenter, right? And I think it was a DJ too. So Pastor Easterwood has a day job befitting a man of Christ. He is the ICE field officer for the state of Minnesota. There he is when the ACLU sued the Department of Homeland Security and ICE over the savage beatings of 5 protesters in the Minneapolis area. Pastor Easterwood and his boss, to his left, Kristi Noem, they were listed as the defendants. So some people in Minneapolis think there might be a disconnect between this guy preaching the gospel in the morning and then torturing women and children in the afternoon. This Pastor Easterwood is the ICE field director, meaning he runs the entire operation in the state of Minnesota. So, like any man of Christ, Pastor Easterwood, ICE field officer and pastor, like any man of Christ, he's confronted with the age-old question, who would Jesus deport? Who would Jesus deport? Do you go with the Hispanics today? Or do you change it up and deport some Somalis? It's hard out there. It's a difficult question. Who would Jesus deport? Well, on Sunday, activists from Racial Justice Network, Black Lives Matter, Minnesota, and other civil rights organizations interrupted a service at this pastor's city's church in St. Paul. He wasn't there, but they screamed ICE out and justice for Renee Good. These were Southern Baptists. They didn't take too kindly to this. On Thursday, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced the arrest of 3 of those protesters, including civil rights attorney Nikema Levy-Armstrong, Chantel Louisa Allen. She's a member of the St. Paul School Board and is also a community organizer, works with Black Lives Matter Minnesota. And they also arrested William Kelly, an anti-ICE activist and U.S. Army veteran. The 3 are charged with violating the FACE Act, which prohibits people from interfering with the practice of one's religion. They were also charged with conspiring to deprive individuals of their civil rights. Bondi is using a law written to arrest members of the KKK. A federal judge in Minnesota refused to approve the arrest of journalist Don Lemon. He's the former CNN anchor. He was in the church covering the protests. He knew about it beforehand, so Pam Bondi wanted to prosecute him, being an accomplice, co-conspirator. But a judge said no. Well, how are we doing on time here? I'm going to wrap it up. This is Bishop Bob Hirschfeld. He is the Episcopal Bishop of New Hampshire. On January 9th, during a vigil for Renee Good outside the New Hampshire State House, this was arranged by faith leaders in the state of New Hampshire, Bishop Bob Hirschfeld, the Episcopal Bishop of New Hampshire, advised members of the clergy to get your wills written, have your affairs in order. Speaking of the cruelty, injustice, and horror unleashed in Minneapolis, the bishop said he feared a new era of Christian martyrdom may be upon us. He called on members of his clergy to bear witness, not to engage in violence, not to break the law, but to bear witness to the suffering of our nation's most vulnerable. He said, quote, "I have asked them to get their affairs in order, to make sure they have their wills written, because it may be that now is no longer the time for statements, but for us, with our bodies, to stand between the powers of this world and the most vulnerable," unquote. The Reverend Al Sharpton, speaking on Martin Luther King's birthday, said, "There's never been a time more in my life that the dream of Dr. King is at risk than right now." Donald Trump, at the end of the day, acknowledged Martin Luther King's birthday, like Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern. He took so much flack for not acknowledging Dr. King's birthday. He issued some statement that made absolutely no sense. Well, I will leave you with the words of my hero, New York State Attorney General Letitia James, who spoke at the Brooklyn Academy of Music on Martin Luther King's birthday. Quote, "If you think you're exempt from this authoritarian government, then you are a fool." I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you for listening. Please share this. Remain peaceful, nonviolent. Stay alert. Bear witness. Register to vote. Register to vote. And you know who to vote for. Stay peaceful, nonviolent, peaceful resistance. Bear witness. Register to vote. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room. Leave a comment. I read all your comments. Please share this episode. Hit the like button so it'll remain in your feed. And hang in there. hang in there. Don't think about yourself. Think about somebody more vulnerable than you. There's always someone more vulnerable than you. Think about people who are vulnerable and how you can help them.